The 5 freedoms of business ownership. People. It's really the idea of being able to work with who you want, who you enjoy working with. Purpose. Having that purpose, I think, is a huge plus in the business. Location. You have that flexibility to really decide, what is your environment.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, where you can escape the corporate trap through franchise ownership. Here's your host, Giuseppe, the Franchise Guide.
Welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe, your Franchise Guide, the show where we help corporate executives experience time and financial freedom via franchising. Thanks for joining us today. We have a 2-part series today on the 5 freedoms of business ownership. It's a show we did in the past, but I wanted to spend some extra time and tie in some additional ideas for those that didn't catch those few episodes. So the 5 freedoms of business ownership with Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach. So he talks about this quite a bit, exactly what are these freedoms. And, a lot of people are familiar with some of them, but I thought it'd be great to really revisit and look at these 5 freedoms. And, really this is what we're trying to accomplish with owning a vehicle like business or just about any investment. So for today's show, we're going to focus on business ownership. And then this is going to lead into some future shows that are going to talk about investments and the differences in investments from startups to franchises to real estate and to other areas such as traditional stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So we're going to talk about the differences, really how it affects those freedoms. So looking forward to that. But for today, we're going to focus on just business ownership and these 5 freedoms. So I'm going to start with maybe one that people don't talk as much about. So the first one is the freedom of people. And what does that mean? It's really the idea of being able to work with who you want, who you enjoy working with. Now, when you're a W-2 employee, you're assigned a manager, you're assigned your colleagues and staff, and that's who you're really working with, right? You're reporting to that manager, which is obviously dictating your future and future promotions and things like that. So not really much freedom there. The clients, maybe like I had in my last job, I work with a specific client for certain specific companies in a certain region. So I wasn't able to really work anywhere in the country or work with any type of client. It was a specific client in the financial services industry. And the list goes on. Really just didn't have that flexibility. Basically, you tell me what to do and, did my job for the day. So the reason, I bring this one up and it's an area overlooked is as a business owner, you can really decide when creating that business or that franchise, who is your ideal client, who's your ideal customer for that particular business, and really getting to work with those individuals you enjoy working with. You get to hire the staff. It's completely up to you. There's going to be a interview process. You'll get to bring on staff and hopefully you work with some great people that are much stronger than you in those certain areas like we talked about in a previous episode. So you want someone that maybe has no social media better than you can. That's a better bookkeeper that understands the laws and regulations from state to state. So, really having control there, but also it comes down to clients and customers. Sometimes, we have a customer or client that is taking up, a majority of the time. It's a distraction to the office. And yes, they are, you're collecting income and revenue from that customer, and there's a profit. But overall, what is the toll that they're having on the office? So really having the ability to fire a client or customer. And I'm not saying this is something that we aim for, but having the ability to choose not just the staff, the employees, or not just the contractors, if that's the type of business you're in, but getting to really select and decide the customers and clients you're getting to work with. So, owning a business has that flexibility. This is something that you're going to be dedicating a lot of your time to. So why not enjoy, the people you're around, your surroundings, and everyone else you're working with. So that is one of the freedoms that Dan Sullivan talks about from Strategic Coach. And it's one of the things I didn't think about, in my journey in entrepreneurship. And it's, I call it almost one of the bonuses that I get to really work with great people and as many people as I'd like. If I want to have staff, if I don't want to have staff, if I want to, bring on new customers or not, or have deeper relationships, you have that ability to do so. All right, let's switch gears. So the second one is this idea of purpose, and this business really, being a purpose-driven business. Now, it really could be two ways. So some businesses, the underlying service or business itself is something that's giving back to the community. So an idea that comes to mind is, a company we work with around childhood enrichment, getting kids active again and off their screens, reducing screen time, which I know sometimes I'm guilty of as well. And, this idea of purpose right within the business, really kind of giving back in the community, doing something good, getting kids active again, off their screens, and just really, being kind of how it was, I think, back when I was a kid. There was less electronics, there wasn't any internet. So, having that purpose, I think, is a huge plus in the business. Now, sometimes, and I ask this question, that is not something of importance, that the underlying business itself is purpose driven. Maybe it's something around cleaning or painting. And I'm not saying that you're not giving back, or you're beautifying the home for a family or an office and things like that. But some people say, what, I'm okay with a business that's extremely profitable, that can cash flow quickly. I want to use the proceeds. I want to use the funds and the money I've made from that business to do good for my community, to give back. And I've heard stories of people doing really well with their businesses and starting their own charity. So maybe it's not the underlying business or service offering, that product or service that you're offering, but it's really along the lines of, okay, I've made some good money, I'm going to start my own charity. Or maybe not starting an own charity, but I know that we give back to certain organizations, certain charities that you can give to at the end of the year or throughout the year. So these are freedoms of having that purpose. And some people, the vehicle, that business, they want something more, and they want the business itself to give back to the community. In other cases, they're starting a charity from the proceeds, or from the exposure. Maybe they're getting a lot of exposure in the media. So that's the second one. So we talked about people and we talked about purpose. The third one is location, and location's a big one, because depending on the business, depending on the service offering and how it's structured, it may or may not need you to work at a retail brick and mortar location. So obviously, something in the space of fitness or massages, you're going to be in a physical location, but you may not want that. You may want to keep the investment lower. You may want to, work from home, and that's completely fine. So having the ability to work from home and be a little bit more remote, and kind of just, maybe it's working off of video and Zoom calls and things like that, where there's less travel, or you're not reporting to a physical location. In some cases, you may be a little bit more hands-on, but once the business itself is set up and you have a team in place, that's where you're able to take a step back and have the team manage the day-to-day, so that you are, managing the KPIs, overseeing the marketing and the financials from home, from your home office. So location is really important. And, you have that flexibility to really decide, what is your environment. We have known of franchise owners that have somewhat of a remote business, where they're able to travel afar, go to Europe, and have a team in place that they can manage as long as they have an internet connection. So, another freedom is, being able to work. Some people, their dream is to retire and move to Europe, or eventually just move to Europe. And now you have that ability, depending on that business. And there's going to be some parts there, right? You want to make sure that you have the right people in place, the technology to manage from afar, and that the business was set up for success, for that owner to be able to kind of manage, and maybe have a general manager that they work with day in, day out to kind of check in on the business and run the day-to-day. So this is episode number 1, and looking forward to your feedback. Talk to you guys soon. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed part 1. This is just a continuation of part 2. The fourth, and I talk about these two, time and financial freedom, because we want this business to be sustainable. We don't want something that you're going to be not kind of miserable, not happy with day to day. Time is the only constant in the equation of these 5 freedoms, where we all have 24 hours in a day. It's what we do in those 24 hours that really makes all the difference.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.